And joining us here today is Kira Rudik, Ukrainian MP and leader of the Voice Party. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
So what do you expect this conference to bring to the table, so to say? There are many important leaders there already. In fact, President Volodymyr Zelensky is right now holding talks with the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. What do you think should be the main takeaway from this particular meeting when it comes to rebuilding Ukraine, but also when it comes to funding?
Well, even though the conference is named Recovery Conference, there is one expectation that we in Ukraine have from the Germany right now. And this expectation is called Tauruses. So there has been many discussions and attempts to push Germany to get us the Taurus missile systems. However, we didn't get the decision before. So we hope that personal meeting by President Zelensky and Chancellor Olaf Scholz will have this result. Aside of the military production, aside of increasing our air defense systems, of course, the main topic of the conference will be the energy rebuild and helping us to go through the next upcoming winter that we anticipate to be very hard. So I'm right now in Kiev, and I can tell you that we have energy outages almost every day. Like last week, we had energy 4 hours in, then 4 hours outage, then 4 hours in. And it's like every day. And you can imagine how hard it is for people to go with their lives just to continue some basic operations this way, when the elevator is not working, when there are outages in schools, when it is just generally hard to conduct business, and everyone who has the energy generators are using them. So we need at least a way to support our destroyed energy system so that we can have the basic level of survival, so people can have electricity the major part of the day and night. And we are not at this pace right now. And we know that in autumn, in winter, it will be much worse. So there are a couple of directions on this matter. The first one is getting more import of the energy and electricity from the Europe. Second point is getting the particles for the transformators and generators so we can sustain ourselves. And the third point is building the micro generation, so building more generations of energy in the cities so we can support our citizens. And these things will be discussed because not only that requires the finance support, it also requires quickly getting things that will take years to provide. And this is the main goal of the conference right now, not per se rebuild, but actually how to get our energy system to support us so we can all survive through the winter.
And like you mentioned, now the multifaceted support is needed, but then again also the Ukraine Recovery Conference aims to mobilize international support for Ukraine's reconstruction as well. So that leads to my next question. What specific infrastructure projects are prioritized, for instance, for reconstruction, and how will they contribute to Ukraine's long-term stability? Can we talk about this so soon?
So first and foremost, when we are talking rebuild or recovery, it is not about, building new cities or building bridges. It is of making people who lost their homes because of Russian aggression just to have a place to live. On January 2nd, there was a missile hit near where I live. And it was a Kinzhal missile, and it hit 400 meters from my home. And I witnessed how my windows were pulled out of their frames and thrown into the middle of the rooms. At that day, the missile hit near the building of 9 stories and 6 entrances. And this building was burned to the shell. And more than 200 families lost their homes just with this one attack. And 5 people were killed. So by this day, the building is not rebuilt. And we know that people are still trying to survive. Someone lives with their relatives, with their friends. But even to rebuild a building like this, we need finance, we need companies that will be supporting us. So it is very simple of making sure that people have a place to live, and this is our main priority. And we are also talking about people who had to flee their homes from the east of Ukraine, from the south of Ukraine, from the temporary occupied territories. So this is the top priority, to make sure that people have a place to live. Second priority, of course, is rebuilding infrastructure. And as we talked about energy infrastructure, we are talking about the bridges that are very critical for us also in the military capacity. But when we are talking about the rebuild, we need to remember that while we have not won the war and we have not stopped Russia, the destruction will continue, and we will need more and more resources, and it could be a never-ending story. So we need to always keep focus on what to do to help us win, and not only about the rebuild. And it all goes with this circle where we come back to the point one, development of the weapons, of the supplies, to help our army to push Russia back, and then we will be able to rebuild our territories and will not have the threat of the constant attacks that are happening every day right now.
And in the wake of European elections, are you worried about Europe's political landscape in the context of rebuilding Ukraine? Because we see in many countries parties which can be described variously as far-right, Eurosceptic, populist. They are on the rise, and many of them actually don't want to support Ukraine. Furthermore, they want to return to business as usual with Russia, which, of course, it seems insane from our perspective. But they have a very different view on that. Are you worried that there might be this sort of negative momentum building up, which could make it more difficult for pro-Ukrainian forces to make sure that Ukraine actually is rebuilt and wins the war?
Jonas, when we are looking at the results of the European elections right now, and we are looking holistically at European Parliament, I think the centrist, pro-European, pro-Ukrainian forces are still very strong. And we think that they will be able to build a coalition and appoint the European Commission. So I think here I'm more positive, and I would say I'm carefully optimistic. However, yes, it is generally dangerous trend when the Eurosceptics are coming, because we here in Ukraine are the best example of that you can fight and you can win only if you remain united and if you have a very good allies by your side. Also, there are some parties that are considered right. However, they are still very pro-Ukrainian. For example, if we look at Italy and Giorgia Meloni, she was surprisingly, but also gladly for us, she is very pro-Ukrainian and anti-Russian, and she understands the threat. So I think what we will have as a challenge for all of us once the new European Parliament will begin their sittings is to work with the rights and also with the far rights and explain them the threats and deliver our messages and persuade them. Because, as we say, it's easy to work with the ones who believe in you. It's hard to work with the ones who are skeptical about you. And we will be happy to bring people here to Ukraine to show them around and to let them witness what is happening with their own eyes. And we have seen this strategy working very well, because you may see something on the TV and it will just still sound very far away. But then you take a train from Warsaw or you take a train from Berlin and you figure out that actually the war is much closer than you can imagine. And we in Ukraine are really holding down the European fort to make sure that the Russian aggression would not spread from here.
That's a very important point there, because we do see that it's not only the matter important for Ukraine, but it is an important matter globally. So looking ahead, what do you think are the next steps for Ukraine following the outcomes of the Berlin conference?
Well, this week will be indeed very important for Ukraine. First, the conference in Berlin, but also at the end of the week, there would be a peace summit in Switzerland, where we plan to expand our table of allies and have much more countries sitting at this table, hearing our position, our perspective, and getting them involved into the peace discussions and in the processes where we all agree on, such as the nuclear security, the food security, and of course the exchanging of the prisoners of war, all to all. And we hope that that would be successful and allow us to have really more countries that will stand by Ukraine and understand that the war needs to end, and this needs to end on a like really fair win of Ukraine. And the next important event is the summit of the G7, where we have high expectations on the decision of the using the frozen Russian assets. This work has been going for 2.5 years right now, and we know that there would be a first major step taking at these discussions. We do not know what the decision be just yet, but we know that it will be definitely using the Russian assets for the sake of Ukraine, or at least the proceeds for those assets. And we really need money right now, and I think it's only fair and only really logical thing to do is to make Russia pay for the destruction and to make Russia pay for the military development that we will be having, so that we can win the war. And that will be a significant step. So fingers crossed, hopes here are very high. There are final preparations and final works, but I think if we talk next week, we would already be at a very different world.